We're on sermon number 20 called Forever Marked. It's a sermon on the mark of the beast. Now, when many people think about the mark of the beast, they think that this sermon exposes the papal power. It does that. But the issue in the mark of the beast is much greater. The issue in the mark of the beast is a settling into the truth with a loyalty to Christ so that we can never be moved. The issue of the mark of the beast has more to do with our own hearts than it does with the papacy. It has to do with more to do with our own decisions to follow Christ. And so as we look at this sermon, we want to look at it from this perspective, and we want to present it to our audiences from this perspective, that the central issue is loyalty. The central issue is faithfulness. The central issue is obedience to God. Now, how can we avoid receiving the mark of the beast? There is an introduction in which we talk about Nebuchadnezzar. What happened in the past will happen in the future. And the story of Nebuchadnezzar is one that has unique parallels with the story of the mark of the beast. Nebuchadnezzar, you remember, went to bed one night and he had a dream. The dream of an image of the head of gold, the breast and arms of silver, the thighs of brass, and the legs of iron. And as he had that dream with the iron legs and the 10 toes and the rock smiting the image, God revealed to him that the head of gold represented Babylon, but his nation would collapse and crumble. Nebuchadnezzar didn't like that thought, so he built another image, a counterfeit image that was all of gold. Now follow me closely. The opening illustration introduces these principles. It introduces the fact that you have a counterfeit image, all of gold. It introduces the thought that you have a universal world ruler, Nebuchadnezzar, who passes a universal decree condemning men and women to death who will not worship a certain way. The furnace is heated 7 times hotter, so it is a time of trouble greater than any time of trouble, and there is a test question for 3 Hebrew worthies, and that is the commandment, the second commandment that says, "Thou shalt not worship any image." So a second commandment becomes a visible test question of inner loyalty. Do you notice the parallels? A universal world leader passes a universal decree condemning to death the people of God if they don't worship in a certain way. Will that take place in the last days? Will indeed there be a similar decree by a similar universal world leader, by a similar power in the last days? Will the issue in the last days again be worship? Again, will the furnace be heated 7 times hotter? And what happened? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into that furnace, but there with them was Jesus Christ. In our greatest time of trouble, Jesus is there. Now notice page 6. Page 6. The king looks into the hot, fiery furnace. He sees Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He shouts to his advisors, "What's going on here?" To their amazement, not a hair of their head is singed. God has saved them in the flames. Now we come to a, what everybody? Transition. Bottom of page 6, transition. Well, you might be thinking, I'm glad we don't have someone dictating our worship to us. I'm glad that all this death decree business was in the Old Testament. But I'd like to tell you tonight that like the 3 Hebrews, we living in the last days will be faced with a similar choice. There is a very important paragraph on the top of page 7. Everyone living in the last days will have a choice that will seal their destiny forever. A choice that will involve obedience to God and His commands or worshiping and obeying another power. And the penalty for disobeying God, the penalty for obeying God will be death. It doesn't seem possible, does it? But one of the clearest warnings is in the book of Revelation. Here's the first text we turn to, Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13. One of the most solemn warnings in all of the Bible. Here it is, Revelation 13. And you'll want to read that. The Bible says in Revelation 13, verse 9, "He that has an ear, let him do what? Hear." And God says, "He that has an ear, let him hear." Why? Hear what? Revelation 14 and verse 10. Revelation 14, verse 10. It talks about those that receive the mark of the beast, and it says they'll drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of His indignation. The wine of the wrath of God? The destructive power of God, if we receive the mark of the beast, must be pretty important. What is the beast? Who is the beast? What is the mark of the beast? How will this mark of the beast be carried out? Next text on page 8, Revelation 13, verse 16 and 17. Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 and 17. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or in their foreheads, that nobody could buy or sell except the one who has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. Read that text and emphasize it. What does it say? Unless a person receives the mark of the beast, they cannot buy or they cannot do what? Sell. And ultimately, according to Revelation 13, verse 15, they will, if they don't receive the mark of the beast, they will be what? Killed, the Bible says. The Bible says, if you don't receive the mark of the beast, you'll be killed. See, man says, if you don't worship the beast, we won't buy from you or sell to you, and you'll be killed. God says, if you do receive the mark of the beast, you will receive the 7 last plagues, the wrath of God. So we will be caught, as some say, between a rock and a hard place. But loyalty to God will take us through this final crisis. Obedience to God will take us through. Who is the beast? What is the mark? How can we keep from receiving it? If God gives us such a solemn warning against the mark of the beast, I would think that He would warn us who the beast was, and I would think He would keep us in good knowledge so that we'll know how to keep from receiving the mark of the beast. On pages 10 and 11, we go through very carefully an identification of who the beast is. We explain very carefully. Coming over to page 16, the Bible says the dragon, Revelation 13, verse 1 and onward, says this. John says, Revelation 13, 1, beginning, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a great beast come up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and he had feet like the feet of a bear, and a mouth like the mouth of a lion. We're describing all of that in pages 10 through 17. Then it says, the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and great authority. Now notice that's page 15, bottom. The prophecy predicted that the dragon would give the beast its power, seat, and great authority. Who is the dragon? Well, the dragon is Satan, working through pagan Rome in chapter 12 to destroy Christ. So the dragon has to be Satan working through somebody, pagan Rome. So if the dragon, pagan Rome, Satan working through pagan Rome, gives the new power, the beast that rises in Revelation 13, its seat of government. Who gave pagan Rome its seat of government? Right here, page 16, we point out that Constantine moved his capital to Byzantium, and he named it Constantinople, and he left to the Rome and to the pontiff the seat of his government. And we go down and explain very carefully how pagan Rome and Constantine gave the seat of its government to papal Rome. We continue to describe the issue that Revelation 13 clearly describes, the rise of the papacy. The papacy received the seat of its government from pagan Rome. The papacy indeed became a blasphemous power, claimed to forgive sins like the Bible described that it would. But the Bible says that there would be a mark, that the papacy would have a mark of its authority. What is the mark of the papacy? Well, the papacy has a mark and God has a mark. And you can never understand the papacy's mark until you understand God's mark. What is God's mark? Another key text, Revelation chapter 7. Revelation chapter 7. What is God's mark? You can never understand the mark of the papacy unless you understand God's mark. This is a good emphasis point, page 18. What's God's mark? Revelation chapter 7, verse 2. And I saw another angel ascend from the east, having the seal of the living God. So there is the mark of the beast on this hand, and what's on the other hand? What's the opposite of the mark of the beast? The seal of God. So a mark and seal are interchangeable. You can have the mark of the beast, the seal of the beast, the mark of God, the seal of God. See, mark, seal, and sign are interchangeable. So you have the mark of the beast, the seal of the beast, the sign of the beast. All the same thing. You have the mark of the God, the seal of God, the sign of God. So what is the seal of God then? We now go through on page 18 and 19 and show that God's seal, God's sign, God's mark is the Sabbath. What does Ezekiel the prophet say?